Hey y'all, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. You know what time it is. Me, Augustus C. Foster. Welcome to another installment of the Man Talk Monday podcast. Man, as always, I am extremely appreciative for every listen, every like, every follow, every share, specifically share, man. On this podcast, if it's your first time listening, we talk faith, family, fatherhood, and pretty much everything under the sun that encompasses this daily life that we call manhood. Today's episode is a bit of a break, but not a break from our normal topics. I talk a lot about fatherhood and parenting and really been on navigating the standard and setting standards for your children, boundaries, encouragement, showing up. And I want to not get away from that because this is, in essence, the same topic, but in a different form. Today's episode is open struggle, uh, a discussion on Black men and homelessness. And the first and foremost, the reason I wanted to do this is, well, I have a number of reasons. The first primarily is, if you don't know and you're not following the foundation, uh, there is the Pamela Jones Community and Education Foundation, which is named in honor of my mother. Pamela Jones was her initial. And then she married and became Pamela Foster, and a lot of people met her as that. And then she grew, also became known as Pamela Newsom. So she's been Pam, and I am Pam's son, affectionately, as many people know me. And started the foundation because I wanted to be able to work with family and others and just community partners and continue the legacy of work. And our first effort outside of our other partnership with Bags of Grace, which is my daughter's nonprofit organization, where we go and we feed the homeless and provide mobile services of necessities to them outside of Bags of Grace. Our first big thing we're doing this year is our cold drive. And we plan on servicing at least 100 people. Now, that'll be everything from ranging from food to everyday necessities to actual cold wear. One of the most important things that we're doing is gathering together socks. I had a couple of coworkers who actually pooled money together and donated. And with their donation, I'll be going and purchasing a whole bunch of socks pretty much so that we can provide them. One of the partner organizations we'll be working with on our first cold drive will be Covenant House. So with them, we'll be looking to deliver detergent, socks, everyday needs and goods that they use for even their people who they service who are under the age of 18 and facing homelessness. So we'll be able to provide them with services and some articles that they could be an absolute blessing to. And we're thankful because this is a first year doing this, and to be able to walk in and say, hey man, we would love to partner with you guys and work together on what some services we could do, where we could fill in. And it's just amazing, man. And I'm sure my mother is proud. And that's one of the reasons I did this. And in saying she's proud, I know that God is proud because we're doing this. Because you have to remember the widow and those who do not have, and the fatherless and the homeless. Like, we're too many references in the Bible tell you these are the people who you should be servicing. So that was one of the other reasons I want to discuss this topic. The third reason I want to discuss this topic, and there's a small number of people who know, but when I titled this initially, I was calling it the invisible struggle. But I recognize that it's not an invisible struggle. It's an invisible, things that are invisible you cannot see. So when we talk about homelessness, specifically amongst Black men, it's not an invisible struggle. It's an open struggle. And outside of wanting to discuss this, to tap in with people and to be able to promote the work that we're doing through PJCF, and you find this website will be on the ticker. And outside of just the work that we're doing there, and a lot of work that I do community wise with Delta and with Chiefs and with Global Humanity and Love Beyond Walls and Covenant House and working with Gateway Center, like outside of, like, I enjoy all of that work because I recognize where I say this is an open struggle with Black men and homeless. Like, these are the men that I see, but I also recognize fully that I was at one point homeless. that I did not have a place to call home. Now, there are people who are going to listen to this whose brains are going to be absolutely fried because they'll try to pinpoint which of the times in my life that I did not have my own address. I did not have anywhere to get mail. I did not have anywhere to wash my clothes. I did not have anywhere to store my articles. There'll be people who probably try to think, man, when did this happen? Now, that's the invisible portion of it. Me giving you the vulnerability of recognizing that, yes, I have a family who listens to this, share it around, that I'll have cousins, uncles, aunts who listen to this and go, oh my gosh, when did this happen? And that's the thing. When I was couch surfing, sheltering, or living in my car, I remember not wanting to tell people, not wanting to have the discussion of, man, how do I explain this to my parents, to my sister, to family? I don't, when I took the tour of Covenant House, it was a bit overwhelming because I had flashbacks. But then I also had this amazing feeling of comfort and peace because a lot of the people in there, a lot of younger black males, like Covenant House is in Atlanta, they service 18 to 24-year olds. The wealth of people who I saw in there with services being provided were overwhelmingly black men. And in speaking with uh, both the director and the communications liaison and the PR person, and just picking their brains and following up with a couple on LinkedIn saying, this is what I saw, but just from a numbers perspective, how bad are we looking? And all of them said the same thing, like, we're alarmingly dealing with young black men, mostly between the ages of 18 and 22. So it gave me comfort seeing that they have a place. But then I go back to the title of this. It's not an invisible struggle. It's an open struggle. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, California, San Pedro, Compton, Carson, Long Beach, West LA, East LA, all over. The one thing that I could tell you that I consistently saw growing up was homeless black dudes. Homeless black dudes. I remember a gentleman named Earl. My mother talked about Earl until she passed. Earl was a gentleman who you could tell something had occurred with him on his mind. And I remember my mom telling me a story. I might have been about 14 to 15 years old. And Earl had some kids, and Earl's kids had come by her job. And they were saying, we know you know my dad and this. And she was mind blown because she said, I didn't know the man had kids. And basically, the long short, the kids had told her, like, our dad worked for like Northrop Grumman. He'd worked for NASA, and he at one point was like almost running the show at a JPL, Jet Propulsion Labs, out in Pasadena, Altadena. If everybody in California and the LA area knows, them folks is getting money. And Earl had worked there in the 70s and 80s, basically got a hold of some bad dope, wrecked his brain, left his family, and just was out just in the streets. And his kids explained to her, it's like he at some point he wants to be there because he didn't recognize, like, I have this place to go to. And his kids were just so like disheartened at the fact that their father offered this one thing and they ended up out there. And he was there. And I would see Earl all the time taking the bus. Like, I'm from LA. Like, I don't know if it's the same in New York or Chicago or Texas or Detroit or anywhere else. But in LA, like in the 80s and 90s, we grew up seeing dudes on the bus stop who never took the bus. Like Mr. Charles and them would sit on the bus stop. Mr. Ray and them was on the bus stop. Mr. Bonds was on the bus stop, like not taking the bus. They just hung out, drunk liquor, drunk beers, smoked cigarettes, talked to the women, laughed with the kids. And they did that all day. That was their lives. Like, I didn't recognize it until I got older. These were men who didn't have anywhere else to go. But I saw these men growing up. I saw hella black men homeless growing up. And I thought to myself, even thinking to myself now, like we make up less than 15% of the population, less than 15% of the entire population of the United States of America, but we account for almost 30% of its homeless. Now, of course, like this is there's some history that goes in there. We could talk about chattel slavery. We could talk about immigration laws. We can talk about the introduction of programs like the New Deal, where African Americans were left out. We could talk about all of that, all of like disproportionate history, like how we've been disproportionately affected and impacted from like systemic racism, mass incarceration. We could talk about all of that. We could also talk about the fact of how do we change it, because it's a cycle. It's literally a cycle. Like I thought about seeing, I'm thinking about it now, even as recording this, being a kid, seeing these men living in the park, living on bus stops. We have a gentleman who I'm going to learn his name, but we see him 2 to 3 times a week. My daughter's in the car when we'll stop. We'll give him a bag of grace. We'll go, we'll speak with him. My wife will go. She just dropped it, prayed with him. I came home one night from work. I told her I got in like 20 minutes late. She was like, "You were later than normal." I said, "Yeah, I ran into our friend who's on the bus stop. I passed by him. He's by the racetrack by my house." And like the Holy Spirit told me, "Man, turn around. You got time." I turned around, whipped around on him. It was a couple weeks ago, and I pulled up on him. He's under this blanket. It's cold outside. Not, went and bought a bunch of hand warmers. I said, "Hey, man," and my wife runs. He said, "Yeah, okay." And I give him, the bag of grace. I said, "Man, hands warm, feet warm. You had a little cold." I just give him just a handful of hand warmers, feet warmers, prayed with him and left. And even in that, like I thought, there's hundreds of thousands of people like this, and a lot of them look like me. And I would love to resolve homelessness overall. Would love it. Specifically for people who look like me. No one should be homeless, but when I talk about it for people who look like me, I mean it, because it almost has been a targeted effort, like a very targeted approach to make sure these things happen. Like I think about sleeping outside, sleeping in a car, sleeping in a shelter, like the lack of safety, the danger involved. Will I get found? Will someone come and get me? Like I think about it from a mental health standpoint. I think sit down. I'm going to say something. I want you to pause this, really think about it. How many black dudes who who go for mental health, like who care about it, who go see a therapist or a counselor? How many do you know who every response to them going through a tough day is them making some kind of joke and laughing it off, or making some quip of that's homophobic because you shouldn't be worried about him? Like really think about that. That's the existence for a lot of men with families, with homes, with jobs. It's for a lot of us. Now imagine the burden, lack of safety, lack of consistency, lack of water, lack of food, lack of shelter, on top of all of that mental health stuff. We There are already issues in the community with black men being able to just access culturally competent care in the mental health space. Off the top of my head, I know 4 black male therapists and or counselors. All of them will tell you the exact same thing. They love the work that they do. They hate to pay. So now it's hard to get. That's the cultural competence. How do I get somebody who they may not be my equal, but nothing else? We both black. How do I get that brother in this space when the pay is crap? So for a person who's already lacking access to mental health, access to tools, access to things they need to give them peace of mind. Now, on top of that, add they're living in a car, they're living in a shelter, they're couch surfing, they're staying with all of these things. And we see it every day and we walk past it. And a lot of us don't say anything. We just look and go, dang, that's tough. I think about the fact that, well, I'll do an episode later on like the idea of the working homeless because I don't think a lot of people understand like that's a thing. I live in Atlanta. There are food deserts everywhere, specifically in the inner city. Like I think of me working for a 14,500 company and knowing people who have 3 to 4 other gigs outside of their frontline employment because debt, school, bills, family obligations. And these dudes are working themselves to the bone to just be above water. We're not even talking about like wage gaps and discrepancies. We're not talking about that 25 to 30% difference between me and white counterparts. We're that already. We're not talking about credit scores. We're not talking about student loan debts being unforgiven. We're not talking about lack of education, being able to progress in certain areas. We're not even discussing that part. We're just talking about basic housing affordability. Again, I live in Metro Atlanta, outside of Metro Atlanta. Like there are people who are struggling to make rent. I'm walking down the streets of I could walk down the streets of downtown Atlanta by Georgia Tech or Georgia State and see somebody who's working 3, 4 jobs and one of them is part-time Uber and Lyft so that they could afford a $2,300 a month apartment in Midtown. And right below them, right out in front of their door, is somebody else who's doing Uber and Lyft who's living in that car. And realistically, because it's Atlanta, it's a city that's, despite its gentrification, and even some of the overblown thoughts of Black Hollywood and Black Mecca and all of that you hear people who don't live here say, the majority of those people who are living on the streets, living in your city parks, being gaffled up by Atlanta PD, if nothing else, trying to just find somewhere comfortable and warm and well lit and safe to sleep at night, getting gaffled up by MARTA PD. Black men. And I think the trick is the reason it's the open struggle is a lot of them, you see them clearly. And think about it more and more, you're not seeing, they're not older, in their 50s and 60s. No, these are 22, 23-year old men, 19-year-old men. Like, just think about that. Like I thought about the fact that a place like Covenant House exists. I thought about people who I really knew, like the dynamics of how, and when I say black, I mean specifically black American. Now that could be your second or third generation Nigerian, Jamaican, Antiguan, Chad, Dominican, etc. But I mean like black, like my family always Mississippi black, like that. Traditionally, you look and like the trajectory of the family is clear with how you kind of get the kids out. You'll keep your daughter around until she gets married, but the sons, it's an episode for another day. We take the sons. The son turned 17 and turned 18. And you out. Like I was gone. I was out. Had my own place. Was working 2 jobs, going to school full time. Was out. That was it. I found consistent work. Had a good government job. Had a good part time job. I was out. Boom, gone. But I left on good terms. Wasn't forced out. I was given an opportunity. Hey, prepare yourself. But then I looked at people who I knew who their mothers and fathers didn't have that consistency, didn't have that support system. They were 18 and they were out. And I look at how that impacts a community. I look at dudes who I know who are coaches, basketball, football, specifically football right now. I know a handful of coaches, California, Georgia, Louisiana, two in Florida. They coach at the high school level. And like even talking to them, they're like, man, yeah, I got this kid. I'm trying to figure out something, blah, 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 blah. Trying to get them like these young men, they're trying to, these are mostly black males. They're trying to get these kids to understand, hey, bro, in a couple of months, it seems callous, but this world owes you nothing. Your parents owe you nothing. You're now legally an adult. And he's like, I got kids who I'm worried for. They're telling me they got kids who they're worried for because like when they turn 18, their mama don't have nothing for them. They don't continue football or do something like they don't, there's no aspects, there's no future for them. I'm like, that sucks. And I think of like the 60 plus thousand black people, like when they ran the numbers, like 22 or 23% of the unsheltered and the unhoused in 2024 were black people. So I'm like, that's 22% of the unsheltered, but 13% of the population. And then that's not even breaking down the full dynamic of understanding that the majority of these are men. And they're not older men, these are younger men. So we see these struggles, the issues with the mental health, the impact in the community, difficulty like working homeless. And again, the history, all the things that we've dealt with. And it's like these, I look and I go and I think of my own life. And in instances where I had nowhere to go and I had to figure it out. And first off, I'm thankful to God. And then the other thing I think is there are so many people who are in my exact same situation who can't get out. And every single day, there are hundreds of people that walk past them who don't know. They went to school, they got a degree, they've never touched dope, never done a drug, never drunk any alcohol, they don't have a bad divorce, they've never been to jail, they've never committed a crime. These are people who walk by hundreds of people every day and don't realize this is a decorated veteran. This is a dude with a Purple Heart. Hundreds of people who walk by who don't realize, this is a guy who's got a master's degree in chemical engineering. Hundreds of people walk by not knowing who this person is. They just know off the assumption, yeah, I don't know how they got there, man. Sucks. They had to do something because that's the mindset. So we've sat and we have this privilege to watch this open struggle. And because they're men, we go, they'll figure it out. I want to close with this. I gave you a lot of numbers, a lot of figures. Behind every statistic is a human being. Behind every statistic, behind every number, behind every study, it's human life. It's an actual person. So when you walk down the street, when you're on the bus, when you're on the train, you're on public transportation, wherever you are, you see that person. Hey, it is an episode about black men because it affects us disproportionately at an extremely high rate. But I don't care if that person's white, I don't care if they're brown, yellow, otherwise. You see that person who's struggling. You see that person who's clearly unhoused. You see that person who's disheveled. You see that person who's going through. As you see that person, see that person. Don't see them for their ailment. Don't see them for their shortcoming. Don't see them for their situation. See them as a human being. If we start there, we make this thing a little bit better. Thank you as always for listening, man. Again, we're out here doing the work actively every day. We're gearing up for this cold drive. We've already partnered with Covering the House. We're going to hit a couple of other places to be able to give the actual essentials needed. Visit the website, pjcef.org. Donate to the cold drive, man. I thank y'all. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Keep rocking with us. Like, share, subscribe. Love y'all. Appreciate y'all. God bless. Peace.